Hi friends, I'm Abby and I'm gonna cast on the Penta Pillar Pullover by James Watts. And from here on out, I'm just gonna call it the Penta Pillar because I know I'm gonna get stuck on Penta Pillar Pullover. Although I did at that time. The Penta Pillar is a modular join-as-you-go t-shirt style top, and I've been wanting to make one of James's modular designs for a while now, and I think this particular top in a color changing yarn looks really cool. And so the yarn that I've chosen is right behind me. This is from Lang Yarns. It's called Linello, and it is almost equal parts of cotton, linen, and viscose. And actually I heard about this yarn because I read James Watts' Substack. I might be a fan. And he did a post about different summer yarns that he likes, and this was one of them. So I've never worked with it before, but I loved this colorway. And actually you're not even getting a full picture of it in this skein because there's a whole other color, which is what really made me like this colorway. One thing to note is that this is a fingering weight yarn and the Penta Pillar calls for a sport weight. So I'm going to adjust whatever I need to adjust to make this work, whether that's needle size, gauge, or the size that I knit. And I'm gonna start off swatching with the needles that the pattern calls for, which is a US 6 4mm. Again, with a sport weight, but I might like the slightly looser gauge that I get with the fingering weight. We'll have to see. The needles were in fact too big, so I went down 2 sizes to a US 4, and I like this fabric much better. It's still very light and airy. It's quite drapey and you can see through it. It's not nearly as open knit as what the US 6s were giving me, so I'm gonna go with the 4. And I remembered that the last time I knit a linen cotton summer t-shirt in a fingering weight, I knit the whole thing on a US 2 and 1. So going down to a 4 makes more sense. I do like the fabric that I'm getting, and it's a fun yarn. I also like that if you look at the texture, it's very thick and thin, but it's pretty evenly thick and thin, so it's definitely just part of the texture. It doesn't look like uneven knitting to me. Hopefully that makes sense. Sometimes with a thick and thin yarn, you can just have like one stitch that's out of sorts with the rest of the stitches, but to me this is distributed pretty evenly across the fabric. Let's talk gauge and sizing real quick. So I always like to take my gauge in 3 places and then I average those numbers to get my gauge. So for example, for my stitch gauge, I will take a measurement here, here, and here, and then I'll average those numbers. Same for the row gauge. I'll take one here, here, and there, and average the numbers. And I feel like that gives me a pretty accurate gauge. But with the fingering weight yarn and the smaller needles, my gauge is quite a bit different from the pattern. So the pattern is 4.5 stitches per inch and 7 rows per inch. And mine is 5.4 stitches per inch and 7.5 rows per inch. So I'm almost a full stitch off, although interestingly my row gauge is not far off, but I think that just has to do with the yarn that I'm using. And since I'm so off stitch gauge, I just did the math to figure out what size I should cast on to get the actual size that I want. This doesn't work seamlessly with every single pattern out there, but with something this simple, I don't think I'm gonna run into issues doing it this way. So I cast on a size large, but I want the finished measurements of the size small. That's going to give me 4 inches of positive ease at my full bust, but 8 inches of positive ease at my upper bust. And the pattern does call for 4 to 8 inches of positive ease. So that's how I decided on my size. Now I've already cast on and I finished the first pillar. It went by pretty quickly and I just started the second pillar. So you pick up all the stitches along this long edge and then you cast on additional stitches. You work back and forth across these stitches and then you join them to the stitches that you picked up along the edge. It's a really fun construction. This is my cast on edge, and so I bound off on this edge. And when I got to this point and I needed to pick up the stitches to start the next pillar, I cut the yarn because I didn't want to line up the colors because I still had this like light green yarn that I was working with from the cake. My yarn hadn't changed colors yet, and I didn't want to line up my next pillar with more green that was then going to fade into the pink. But what I didn't think through is that you start picking up the stitches on this side. So by the time you are casting on your stitches and you're starting your next pillar, you're on the other side. So I didn't need to cut my yarn, and honestly, that is pretty clever construction, and I wish that I had thought through what I was doing, but hopefully moving forward, I won't have to cut my yarn and it will work out so that the colors are all varied. But I'm having fun so far. This first pillar went by pretty quickly. I cast this on yesterday, and already I'm starting my second one. The other thing I wanted to talk about was my needle material, because I'm knitting these with my metal ChowGoo needles. And in the past, when I've worked with plant-based yarn, I have used wooden needles just on the recommendation of others. And I think the idea is that wooden needles are just a little bit more flexible than metal needles, which are obviously not flexible at all. And so when you're working with a yarn that really doesn't have any give to it, especially when you're used to working with wool, the wooden needles are just going to give you an easier time on your hands. But I'm going to be honest, I don't think I notice a difference in that regard. I really like my metal needles, so I decided to stick with them for this project. The other thing I've heard people talk about is that because linen and cotton and plant-based yarns tend to be very slick, that your metal needles will just slip right out of your stitches, and that can be a frustrating experience. And that I definitely will agree with. My needles have come out multiple times just when I'm like moving this project around, but I just slide the needle right back through the stitches and it's not a big deal to me. And I like how fast I can knit with the slicker needles, so I'm sticking with these for now. If that changes, I'll let you know. I finished the back panel. I finished it while we were on a road trip, so I didn't film it, but we've got all 5 pillars there. So this is just a square. When I start the front, I will get into some neck shaping, so that'll be interesting. But overall, I really enjoyed making the back panel. It was very simple but fun. I felt like it worked up pretty quickly because you're just working these short rows. I think the colors turned out great. This is just a little bit more than one skein. This was the last pillar that I knit, and when I got to here, I ran out of yarn, so I had to knit that in a new skein, but I think it fades fairly well. I don't think you'll be able to tell, especially because this will be the side of the sweater. And yeah, I didn't do any color management. It just worked out this way, so I think that's awesome. And obviously this pattern is written with color changing yarn in mind, so it was super simple. I ended up sticking with the metal needles the entire time. I didn't feel a need to move to wood. This yarn is really nice. It is a really good blend of linen and cotton, so it was really easy on my hands. The needle did fall out of my stitches a couple times, but it wasn't a big deal. Just put the needle right back through the stitches. But I am actually switching to wood now because I'm about to get on a plane, and I just started the front panel and it's all packed away, otherwise I would show you. But I just finished the first pillar and I am working on the second pillar of the front, and I'm gonna start some neck shaping soon. And I switched to wood for a couple of reasons. One, it just is a little bit easier to get through security. I have never had an issue taking metal needles through TSA, but I am going through some new to me airports, and I just wanted to be on the safe side because it's the only project that I'm taking. But actually the main reason that I switched to wood is just so that I don't have to fiddle around with it as much on the plane, because the wood needles are grippier, so they will hold on to my stitches a little bit more, and I just feel like that's going to be easier to knit on the go. So that's why I made the switch, and I don't mind wooden needles, so it's all good. All right, let's go get on a plane. Hello, I'm back from New York City. It was my first time. It was a dream. It was a childhood dream come true, and it lived up to the hype in my brain. I had the best time. I want to go back. And I did bring a few things back with me, including a lovely head cold that has kind of knocked me down for the past week. So I have been slowly working on the Penta Pillar, and I finished the front. So here's what it looks like. It's basically the back, but it has this nice neck shaping, which was really fun to do. So to start the shaping, on one of the pillars, you decrease to create that shaping. You bind off stitches, and then you just pick up fewer stitches for the pillars next to that. And then when you want to create the other side, you bind off a few stitches, you do some shaping, and then you work the rest of this neckline straight so that you can shape that and get back up to the height of the shoulders. And there you go. It was not a challenge to figure out at all. And now that I have the front done, I'm going to seam the front and the back together, starting with the shoulders. So this is the back, and I think I need to decide which side I want to be the top. If this side is the top, then I think this matches the front pretty well in terms of color placement, but I think I am going to flip it around. So this will be the color placement. And I like that the orange pillar ended up right in front. I kind of planned that. I was going to cut the yarn if I needed to, but it ended up working out that way. I just started at the right side of the cake, hoping that that would happen. And then that is how the back looks. And that bright orange is at the bottom of the center panel in the back. I'm gonna sit with it for a minute, but I think that's how I'm going to seam it up. And then once I seam the shoulders, I'll seam the sides and get started on the sleeves. This is how much yarn I have left, so more than enough. And I am gonna try to do some color management here. Hopefully you can see I have one of each color left in this skein, so I can decide if I wanna match the sleeves. I think I have enough of one of the colors to do that. And I think I will just knit the sleeves out of the orange and then kind of move into the skein from there. All right, I finished the seaming and the shoulders are now attached. I think it looks really nice. The main thing with the mattress stitch here is that you want to line up the pillars to make sure that that looks neat. On this side, the colors on the front and the back lined up. So you can see starts with the green, and it kind of fades into the pink. And it's essentially like a color repeat without the orange. So like on the front, it starts with the sage, it fades into the pink, and then on the back, it fades from the pink back into the sage. And so on this side in particular, it is going to, like the colors are going to match up. And on the other side, they don't match up exactly. But I like that it is still pretty subtle. Like at least the bright orange is not on the sides. That is just in the middle on both panels. So I think that worked out. When I was first seaming it up, I was questioning my choice of like which way I wanted to turn the back, but I was flipping it around in my head. Like the other way that I could sew it on, the colors would still line up very similarly, just on the other side. So I just decided to stick with it. And you know, I don't think it's that noticeable, especially because it's the front and the back. So you're not really going to be looking at both at the same time. And I do kind of like that it lined up. I mean, I guess ideally it would have lined up on both sides. But again, I don't think that people are going to be like noticing that. And then again on the sides, I think it's fine if the colors are pretty closely aligned. So I'm not going to worry about it beyond that. I made the decision, I stuck with it, and I think it's going to turn out good. All right, so now I have some more mattress stitch in my future. I'm going to seam up the sides and then try it on, because that will be a pivotal moment to see if I got the sizing right. And I do have a little bit of a skein left over, so this is what I'm using to seam. And I'm just gonna skip over all the side seaming because that's kind of boring. So I'll see you when I'm done. Seaming is done and I think it looks really good. I think the fit is perfect. Maybe that's too soon to say, but I really like it. Obviously I'm wearing it over a t-shirt at the moment, but I think I can still get a pretty good assessment of what it's going to look like. The mattress stitch turned out really nice as well. You can see it a little bit better on this side, but I was a little bit nervous about how that was gonna go with this yarn, and I think it went totally fine. And when I was looking at it in the mirror, I was kind of validating to myself that the like thick and thin slubbiness of the yarn doesn't detract from the overall look. I was worried as I was knitting because even though in my swatch I liked how it looked, I just felt like a lot of my stitches were looking kind of wonky because it is so thick and thin. And I mean, you can see how textured the fabric is, but as I had it on and I was just looking at myself, I could tell that it looks intentional and it doesn't look messy. It just looks very textured and kind of lived in and just a little bit more casual, which I like for this style of garment. So I'm happy with that. And I like the way that the shoulders are fitting so far and the armholes. They're not too big, but they're also not super tight. And that is something that you can adjust fairly easily because you're just seaming up the side and then you stop at a certain point. Also, I wanted to mention, so I'm following the size extra large to get a size small with my gauge. And when it comes to certain instructions, like seaming the side up but leaving a certain size hole for the arms, I followed the small. And that's because it's using a measurement. So the pattern does tell you how many rows, if you get row gauge, the armhole should be, if you want to count it out that way instead of measuring it. But I just measured it because that's the measurement that I want, regardless of my gauge. So I just wanted to mention that in case you were wondering about it. And now I'm checking to see what I work on next in the pattern. Okay, next is the sleeves and then you work the collar. So I'm gonna work on sleeves next. And I think I'm just gonna keep going. I've got a couple hours in my evening left. So I'm just gonna keep working on this. I love how it's turning out. Oh, I should show you the back. And I think the length is going to be good, if not a little too long, but we'll assess. Maybe I want to do less ribbing. I'm not sure yet, but I'll figure it out. You know what? I just checked the pattern and it's like this much ribbing, so I think I'm gonna be good. So I just hit this point on the first sleeve and I think I'm gonna add the ribbing now. In the pattern, it's a longer sleeve. It's about double the length before you put the ribbing in, but I think it's a little bit cuter with a shorter sleeve. So I think I'm just gonna keep it to about 2 inches before adding the ribbing. I'm like halfway into the ribbing and I decided to go with a twisted rib because I thought that would look a little bit nicer in this yarn. And so far I'm happy with that decision. And the pattern only calls for like 1 inch of ribbing, so I am nearly done, but I'm gonna go take a cheeseburger break. So I finished both sleeves and I like the length. They're looking a little bit lumpy at the moment. And so I brought my steamer up. I'm just gonna hit them with some steam and see if that helps relax the yarn, because the only thing that I might want to redo is my bind off. Now that I'm wearing it, I think it looks fine, but as I was doing it, I wasn't really sure about it because it is one of those bind offs that flares out a little bit, and I just couldn't tell if that was gonna look sloppy. And I just did the bind off where you knit 2 stitches and then you knit those together through the back loop. And then from there, you just knit the next stitch and then knit it together with your current stitch through the back loop. It's a very simple one, and I did it in the ribbing pattern, but it can flare a little bit sometimes and just not look the best. So we'll see how it does after I steam it. The main thing is that I didn't want it to be too tight. Since this yarn has 0 give to it, if it's in any way tight, it's really going to be noticeable. So those are the sleeves. You can tell this one is like fully orange, and then this one really started to fade into the pink there. And this is what I have left of my skein. So the sleeves definitely took up more yarn than I was expecting. And I think what I'm gonna do now is work on the collar, and I'm going to, almost dropped it, use the pink that's on the outside of this skein. So there is some more pink on the inside there, but I think what's left of the pink on the outside here is going to be more of the pink yarn than what's on the inside. So I'm going to pick up the collar just with the outside of the skein and knit the ribbing. I think it will start to fade into the sage green, which is fine. I think initially I wanted all of the like ribbing to be in a solid color, but I also don't care that much. Like, I'm okay if it's not. And since this is a color changing yarn, like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. So anyway, I'm just gonna pick up the collar with what I have and see where it takes me. And then after that, all I have is the bottom ribbing. So I really feel like I'm cruising on this project. I am almost done. I think it's super cute. I'm very excited to wear it. And I'm also excited to see how this yarn softens and blooms when I block it. The steam definitely helped. The sleeves are way more relaxed and the bind off looks tidier. So I'm pretty confident that a full wet block is really going to help this out a lot. And I'm very excited to block it. It's the next day. Does it look like I've been crying? No, I think I'm good. I just got done eating some Thai food that is so delicious, and normally I can handle the spice, but this time they really went hard and I was crying the entire time that I was eating. Thai food is definitely one of my favorite cuisines. Anyway, I just picked up the stitches for the neck, and the pattern doesn't have an exact stitch count. It just tells you a ratio to pick up the stitches. So I feel like this will be a bit of a trial, and we'll see once I get further into the ribbing if this is actually going to look good. And I'm just doing 1x1 ribbing through the back loop again to match the sleeves. And I did go down to a size US 2 because the pattern has you go down 2 sizes for the ribbing. So that's what I did. This pattern is interesting because usually patterns will tell you to pick up a specific ratio along the shaping, but then once you get to like the front of the neck, like right where I'm at, like right here where you're picking up into the actual stitches, it will have you pick up every single stitch. I really can't tell if I made sense there, but essentially, like let's say this is your neckline, you pick up a ratio along the shaping here, then you pick up every single stitch along the front, and then you go back to the ratio for the other side. Hopefully that was a better explanation, but this pattern just gave me a ratio for the entire neckline. So when I got to this front part where I was picking up the stitches, it had me like skipping a certain amount of stitches, and I don't know if that's gonna look good. I'm just trusting the pattern at this point, and I don't mind redoing it if I feel like it needs to be different, but I at least wanted to try the way that it's telling me to do it. And I just finished the final stitch of the first round, so I'm gonna keep working on it. I'll come back to you. Okay, I'm only a few more rounds in, but I already know I'm gonna restart. I did switch to a smaller circular needle because it was just way too tight. And now that I'm able to see what the collar is going to look like, I can already tell that this is way too small, and it's also kind of pulling at the stitches in the front, and the stitches are like puckering. So I am gonna redo this, and my plan is to pick up every stitch except when I am picking up into the rows, so like the shaping rows. There, I'll pick up a rate of every 2 out of 3 stitches. That's a pretty standard pickup rate for a neckline, so I'm gonna try that and see how that goes. This is going so much better. So here's the size, if you can get kind of an idea. I'm still a little bit concerned that it is gonna be pretty tight, but I'm doing the bind off, so we're gonna find out. Here's how much ribbing I ended up knitting. It is like exactly 1 inch. I decided I didn't want to do the same bind off that I did for the sleeves because it's just not the most attractive bind off, and especially with something that is right at your neck that people are going to be seeing, I wanted it to look nice. And normally with 1x1 rib, I really like the Italian bind off. That's like my most common bind off that I use. And it's like a little bit of a pain to do, but it just always looks so nice that I can't resist it, and I think it's worth it. But because this is twisted rib, I was thinking that wasn't going to look very nice until I had the thought that I can just twist the stitches as I do the bind off. So that's what I'm doing, and I think it's looking nice. Here, I'll show it to you. So it's looking really nice. My concern though is that it's not very stretchy. It doesn't restrict the ribbing, like it can stretch with the ribbing, but it doesn't stretch beyond that. And since this yarn has no give, as we've talked about, I just get a little bit nervous that a bind off that's not stretchy is going to be really restrictive, especially at the neckline. And it is really gonna suck if I have to unpick this bind off. Okay, it is once again the next day. Let me update you. I finished the twisted Italian bind off and it looks great. It's stretchy enough. It looks neat enough for how neatly I could get a bind off to look in this yarn. It fits perfectly. This was definitely the right size. And I will say that the pattern does have a note that if your bind off is too tight, you might want to add stitches when you pick up for the neckline. And because I'm a perfectionist, I decided to unpick the bind off on the sleeves and redo it in an Italian bind off. Does it make that much of a difference? I don't know, but I decided to do it. You can see that the top is the bind off that I had done previously, and the bottom, the orange one, is the Italian bind off. So that's a little comparison. I think in the end, it was worth it. It does look a little bit nicer, and of course, I am going to do the same bind off for the hem. So at this point, I have 3 things left. I need to pick up the stitches for the hem, knit the ribbing, bind that off. I need to weave in all the ends, of which there are quite a few. Somehow I ended up with just a ton of ends. And then I need to block it and let it dry, and then it's done. It's turning out so cute, but I'm gonna wait to try it on until it's fully done. Or I mean, at least to show you, I have tried it on. But I will give you this little overview shot so you can see how it's coming along. There's the back. I think this yarn turned out so cool. And this is just such a fun t-shirt. Like, I don't own anything that looks like this, and I've never made anything that looks like this. Can you tell I'm getting very excited? I also want to try to finish this today. It is a Friday afternoon. I am just taking a break from work. I have like one more thing I need to wrap up, and then I can sign off. And we have kind of a rare Friday evening where we don't have any plans with anyone. I mean, my boyfriend and I might hang out for a bit, but I think I can finish this today. Oh, and I did want to address that the neckline ended up just being in the pink color, which I think turned out perfectly, and I really love the way that looks. Now on to picking up stitches. I am straying from the pattern again. It's telling me to pick up every 2 out of 3 stitches, and I'm just picking up every stitch. I could see how if you're using a wool yarn, maybe cinching in the hem by picking up fewer stitches would work out, but I don't think that's going to look good in this yarn for me. I could be wrong, but if I'm wrong, I'll just redo it. I still think I can finish this, but we do actually have some plans tonight. We're gonna go to Costco. My favorite thing to do on a Friday night. We recently renewed our Costco membership. We had one years ago, but as a couple, it didn't really make sense at the time. But now that all prices are going up, I feel like Costco is just kind of the perfect place to shop right now. And every time we go to Costco, we run into people we know and we have to like talk to them in the aisle. And I feel like a middle-aged dad every time, and I just love that for us. So if you have a Costco membership, I want to know, what's your favorite thing to get at Costco? Whether it's like a snack or a prepared food or like a really good ingredient they have, or maybe it's not a food item, but I just want to know like one thing that you love to get at Costco. I've talked about this before, but one of my favorite things to get is their pesto. And obviously it's like a Costco sized jar and I like really can't go through it that quickly. But somebody commented to freeze it, and you know that's already in my freezer. Okay, but also I really want to check out their wine because I've heard good things and it's always like at such a good price. Last time we went, we got like the Kirkland brand High Noons, and those are really good and quite a bit cheaper. And of course, you got to get the hot dog. All right, I'm really putting some divorced dad energy out there, so I'm gonna continue picking up my stitches and stop talking about Costco. And I'm almost done. We are back from Costco. My Sauvignon Blanc is pretty good. It is now just about to be 8 p.m. Before we left, I did get a couple rounds on the ribbing, so I only have like maybe 6 rounds to go and then the bind off. I'm watching YouTube right now, but I recently started a new show called Department Q. Let me know if you're watching it. I'm only a few episodes in, but I really like it so far. So that is what I will be watching while I finish this, and then probably start weaving in a bunch of ends. I just made it to the bind off. And here it is, my finished Penta Pillar Pullover. I think it turned out really, really nice. I'm so happy with it. I'll step back so you can just get a full picture of the length. It hits me, I think, at a really good spot, so it's not cropped, but it doesn't go like past the widest part of my hips. I really like the yarn, and I think overall the fit is quite good. I'll show you the back. Now I'm gonna sit down to wrap up this video and give you my final thoughts on the yarn, the pattern, the fit and my experience making it. I'll start with my thoughts on the yarn. So this is Lang Linello. It is 40% linen, 32% cotton, and 28% viscose. I bought mine from the yarn store Wool & Co. They have a great online store. And for my size, which was an off-gauge large, I bought 3 skeins. From Wool & Co, this yarn retails for $21 US per skein of 306 yards. But I bought mine at a small discount because Wool & Co offers a 10% discount for certain brands that they sell if you buy a certain amount. And so I got my 3 skeins for $56.70 USD. And I ended up with 43 grams left, which means I used 257 grams, so I did need to buy all 3 skeins. Now, one thing about this yarn that I didn't address at the start of this video because I did not know to address it is that the yarn weight is kind of a debate. I'm holding this skein just because I have another colorway of the same yarn, but Lang lists this yarn as a worsted weight. Wool & Co lists it as a light/DK. And I think I got confused or something and I thought it was a fingering weight, but I actually do think this is much closer to a fingering weight than it is a worsted or even a DK. Because this yarn is thick and thin, I think it ranges from a fingering weight at its thinnest and like a DK weight at its thickest. Another thing is that winding up this yarn is very difficult, at least it was for me. You technically don't have to cake them up because they do come in this style of skein, but I would definitely recommend like balling or caking it up because you can probably tell the skein like really wants to fall apart, and this yarn really wants to tangle itself. When I was winding it, as the yarn's coming off the skein and into the cake, it will just knot up on itself and create a huge mess. Obviously, I showed a clip of me winding at the start of this video when things were going smoothly, but the rest of the time it was not like that. And speaking of knots, there were a few knots per skein for me, so I had to cut the yarn and then leave tails and do that whole thing. I didn't attempt to splice the ends together. I did think about looking up some techniques for doing that with plant-based yarn, but I just decided to keep it easy on myself, and I knew I was just gonna have a lot of ends to weave in. Maybe when I knit my next sweater out of this colorway, I will try splicing it just to see how that goes. This yarn is very crispy feeling. If you've ever worked with a linen, you know what I'm talking about. And I decided to block it in hot water. Not the hottest water that would come out of my tap, but like the temperature you might shower in. And I think that helped take away some of the crispiness. I wouldn't describe it as soft now. Maybe it'll soften as I wear it and wash it, but at least with the one block that I did, it did help the fiber relax a little bit and it's not as stiff, but it is still quite crispy. It does still feel like linen. I really like yarns that aren't 100% linen, but that have enough of it so that you still get all the benefits of it, because this is quite a cool feeling top. It's a little bit more open knit than maybe I would typically knit, and that definitely helps with wearing this in the summer. But it's not scratchy. I don't really feel it on, if you know what I mean. Like, it just feels like I'm wearing a normal shirt. I just love the colors. I think Lang did a really good job fading one color to the next, and the colors are just very well distributed within the skein, and they're very consistent within the dye lot. So I basically got 3 identical skeins when I ordered from Wool & Co, and that really helped with figuring out my color placement. Okay, now onto my thoughts about the pattern. This is my second James M. Watts pattern, and it did not disappoint. This pattern has 9 sizes, and it ranges from a chest circumference of 30 inches to 62 inches, and that includes the 4 to 8 inches of suggested positive ease. And this pattern has all the standard information that you would expect in a pattern. It has clear instructions, it has a really nice schematic, it has a chart with instructions if you want to modify the length. It includes graphics to show you where you're supposed to pick up stitches, so that part was not confusing. It also includes some helpful info on seaming when you get to that part. It tells you what type of cast on to use, but it does not tell you which bind off to use. Just a note, I don't necessarily care either way. It also includes instructions on a major modification to do a checkerboard, which I think is awesome because the designer could have chosen to release that as a separate pattern, but he didn't. He included it in this one and included pictures on all the trickiest parts. And I just think that's really cool to have like a 2-in-1 pattern. There was definitely a lot of thought that went into helping knitters feel confident in modifying certain things and guiding them through that process. And I did mod a couple of things. One was the length. I just cropped it by about 3 inches just because I am on the shorter side. I also changed the ribbing. I just did twisted ribbing, so it's a very simple modification. And then I think the main thing that I modified was just the pickup rate for the neckline and the hem. I talked all about that, but I just made it work a little bit better for the yarn that I'm using. Funny story, earlier today I was on Ravelry looking at people's projects for this pattern, and I found 2 separate projects that look very similar to mine, but they use totally different yarn. And it's a yarn that I've been wanting to try. It's the Barocco Bozzolo yarn, and it's just funny that it's like literally the exact same colors as this yarn. Next, I want to touch on my experience making this top. It's been a while since I've made a seamed sweater, and it was really fun to do, especially because I went on 2 separate trips while I was making this, and because it's in pieces, I was able to take it with me on both trips. And the fact that it's a modular knit made it feel like it went pretty quickly. I remember the back panel, I was working on it and suddenly I was halfway, worked on it some more, and then I was done. Like, it didn't feel at all like a slog. And I like that you start with the back panel because once you get used to what you're doing, you start on the front panel and you switch it up a little bit with the neck shaping, and it just keeps it interesting. I didn't have any issues understanding the pattern or what I was supposed to be doing. Everything was clear. I did need to redo a couple of sections as I discussed, but I view that as just part of knitting and it's not something that detracts from my knitting experience. One thing I did want to mention is that by the end of this, I had 34 ends to weave in, which sounds worse than it actually was. And part of that had to do with the fact that I wasn't splicing my yarn together, so I had all of those ends to weave in. Also, I kept running out of yarn when I was doing my Italian bind off around the hem, so that gave me a few extra ends to weave in, but just due to the construction of this top, I would expect to have some ends to weave in. And I don't have too much to say about the fit. I think it's nice and it fits as your standard drop shoulder. If I did have to critique it, I wish there was a little bit of shaping at the underarm and at the shoulders. I think those are 2 good places to just do a little bit of shaping in a drop shoulder just so you don't get the like bunching that happens. But at the same time, that is pretty standard on a drop shoulder that doesn't have shaping at the arms, so it's not a complaint. And I think the neckline fits really well. It looks nice, it works seamlessly into the design, and from what I've seen on the other sizes, the grading is done well. Oh, one thing I just thought of, so I shortened my sleeves by about 2 inches. I forgot to mention that as a mod, but you watched the video, you know. And if I were to knit the full 4-inch sleeve, I would want my sleeve to be a little bit bigger. So you can see that there is positive ease here, but it is a pretty slim fit sleeve, and I wouldn't want a slim fit sleeve that's longer than this. But that would be an easy thing to change, especially if you're able to follow the instructions like 1 or 2 sizes up. If you're not able to and you have to do it on your own, I still think that would be pretty easy because you would just stop seaming at the point where you want your sleeve to start and then just use the pickup rate and pick up however many stitches that is. You're not doing any shaping for the sleeve, so it doesn't really matter. So that wraps up my thoughts on the Penta Pillar Pullover by James N. Watts. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. I am grateful for your support or your engagement, whatever that may be. And if you have made this top or you're thinking about making it, I am curious to hear your thoughts on it. Or if you haven't made it, but you like this project vlog style of video and want to see more of them, leave me a yarn emoji in the comments. The next video you see from me should be a vlog where I'm finishing all of my whips, so I hope that sounds fun and interesting to you. And if you're still here and you made it through all of that, leave me a llama emoji.